Hello, everyone. So today I wanted to do an update on the Yakuza 7 news. There have been a ton of reactions, of course. I did a video, gave my initial thoughts, and the funny thing is that video was done before there was like any reaction because I just saw the news right away. It just kind of went out, and I set up the video so I didn't read anything. So it's been pretty interesting. Obviously, it's super divisive. Some people think it's cool, some people are very against it, some people kind of like me are like, oh, I'll take it, but I would have taken the old style as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit more now that I've had time to think about it a little bit as opposed to initial reaction. Because reactions are always, they're not necessarily your full thoughts. You don't necessarily have all the details. So I wanted to kind of go over all of the info we have. As you can see, I actually have some links open of all the kind of news and some of the points I wanted to make about why I think they're doing it and other routes they could have taken, things like that. And oh, by the way, you might be able to see my dog in the background. So yeah, so they updated the official website, and thanks to Gamatsu here, they have it all translated and everything. And there's a couple interesting things that have made me pretty curious about the way they word things, and looking at some of the more um, looking more closely at the combat, trying to like analyze it and see if we can pick anything out. And I think they're holding something back. So quickly go over some of this. And worth pointing out, the Western title is going to be Yakuza Like a Dragon. Like a Dragon, of course, is the translation of Ryuga Gotoku. So we're getting the name as a subtitle, kind of like Resident Evil Biohazard in a way. Which is interesting because it goes against the 7 in the West, which you could say maybe is more easy to accept from a Western audience. It's an easier point to jump in. It's very different combat, and it doesn't have the 7 in the name. Maybe that's a good thing for the West. We'll see. But I wanted to go over a couple things here. So, their introduction. They go, the latest numbered entry in the Yakuza series for PS4 is the story of new protagonist Ichiban Kasuga. In the new setting of, I believe it's pronounced, Isizaki Ijincho in Yokohama, the story of the hot-blooded thug stirred up by Ichiban will begin. If the protagonist changes, so does the gameplay. This is a new Yakuza experience. Okay, now let's move on. They go over a long bit about the story, but now we want to focus on the battle. And I do think the story trailer is pretty interesting, but we're going to focus on the gameplay right now. Live command RPG battles bring the fight of the dragon to a new stage. Yakuza 7 uses a live command RPG battle. And I think it's interesting they put live command, which live usually means live action. Usually it's more active, right? It's kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy, and they have active time battle systems and stuff. Generally, they're a little more engaged than just full blown, very traditional RPGs. Anyway, the live command battle system combines the series' signature action with an RPG command system. It has evolved into a system in which anyone can easily enjoy exhilarating battles. Now, I want to point out, I don't like that line a bunch because it has evolved into a system in which anyone almost sounds like they're trying to make it more accessible, which isn't necessarily bad, but base Yakuza action is very easy. If anyone wanted to jump in just for the story, you can play Yakuza on normal and pretty much be anyone. Stock up on healing items. You're not going to have an issue. Pretty much anyone that plays video games, I think, could beat Yakuza on normal if they play safe, especially. So, if they're trying to think, oh, it's not fast paced, so that makes it easier for people, which maybe that's not what they're saying, but that comes across a little weird because this is by far like some super hardcore, like Dark Souls, really hard for someone who's not into video games or barely into to play. So I don't think it needs to be more accessible if that's what they're going for. Anyway, in this completely new battle system, Ichiban Kasuga and his party will fight by selecting techniques with various effects such as attack, recovery, support, and more. And this is interesting. Enjoy immersive and dynamic battles against all sorts of enemies. So dynamic usually means a little more active. I feel like it's usually not just stab, turn, like a very old school. So, and of course, they're showing some screenshots here of like a heat action type thing, because there's definitely going to be those. I'm very confident that we're going to have traditional, like, heat actions or like finishing moves that, when enemies in a certain state or something, you get a really flashy move. I don't expect it to be, they know Yakuza is about flash, so they're going to keep it very flashy. And it's also going to be interesting with a party, because how does that work story wise? A lot of the extra people with you, it's a little odd, right? Like you've got these random people, these are characters in the story if you dig into what's going on based off their descriptions, but it's definitely very intriguing how that works. It makes more sense, right? Kiryu's walking down the street, gets into a fight. Like, I got these people with me, and we're all kind of dancing around. Is definitely weird. I totally agree. And I said the new setting is Yokohama. It's a very big place, kind of a lot of more beach locations and stuff too. So maybe it can kind of combine some of the feeling you get of Yakuza 3 and 6 with the bigger Kamurocho. So that could be really cool. It's supposed to be way bigger, like triple the size or something. But then I wanted to focus on this battle gameplay here because I think this is kind of interesting, and it's pretty low quality, which, by the way, I want to add a complaint. With such a big change for a series, for them to do a press event and everything for this and not have like a big demonstration set up, like they didn't show much. For people that did attend the event, it's not like, oh, they did a 20-minute walkthrough, which is kind of what I think this game needed. You can think about God of War changing its direction, still an action game, but very different. And some people may have preferred the more character action game instead of the behind the back attack with shoulder buttons and stuff, like a Dark Souls game type thing. But they kind of showed it very clearly when they really dug into, like, here's the gameplay, just watch it. And this is like, here's 20 seconds and that old April Fool's video, which was supposed to be like a joke, but it's what we mostly have to go on. But when we play this here, if you look at it, we do have like a lot of the people here are like moving around constantly, and they only seem to be like attacking the people they're close to. So see, like he's backing up away from like the thug here, and you have obviously your, I assume these are your different abilities, whether it's a melee strike or, like they said, recovery or support. Maybe there's buffs, those are popular in RPGs, right? Weaken the defense or something like that. But he's moving around very actively still. Makes me wonder if maybe this is more like Final Fantasy 12-ish, which is, you're kind of full control, moving around the enemy and stuff, but it's still basically turn-based, because you can see a turn order here in the corner. So it is showing a turn, but I wonder if you kind of have full control while taking your turn. And it's not just the party standing there like Persona or something like that. So it feels like he's moving around, and you see they're each kind of like locked on to like their own person, right? Like you can see Ichiban over here. He's focused on this. Like, I don't know that Ichiban from that position could attack this guy, for instance. It kind of implies to me that you do have control, and you are kind of moving people around to attack them. You can't just maybe have a set, here's for party members, here's for enemies. I want my guy on the left to attack that guy on the right, blah, 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 like a normal RPG. It does make me think you're moving people around when you have their turn. I think they're moving automatically when you are not having the glowing border around you. But it does look like it's very positional. So I don't think it's completely traditional in this sense. Everyone is like, they're still like locked on, and I think you have to move to attack, and I don't know if that takes up a timer or something. Like, how long can you move while it's your turn, right? So she's moving around. This girl's moving around. She attacks this guy. And then once she's done attacking it, her turn is over. But like, how long could she moved? Could she have moved all the way over here to attack this guy? This is a lot of the questions I have, and we can see the menu with a lot of the different options you can do, and it looks like you have like SP or MP, like an RPG. So that's interesting. I think they're holding a lot back, and like I said, this kind of goes to one of my problems. While I may be someone that's okay with the gameplay change and very intrigued by it, um, I still think they really screwed up in the way they debuted this. Like, you shouldn't really have to pick up or pick apart kind of low quality footage off screen. Um, so I wonder if they're gearing up for a big TGS showcase. Yakuza games, when they've come out, uh, like right before they come out, they would usually have a TGS showing, and there is no TGS before this game's out. This game's coming out in January. So with TGS in September, mid-September, I do kind of think we might see a decent bit at the show. And a lot of games go gold. They finish development outside of some late patches and stuff. And they can finish development like 2 months ahead of time and stuff. So the games might be a couple months away from being completely done, for the most part, or something in that range, 3 months maybe. So you'd think they have a lot to show. So the fact that they debuted something so radically different in this way, I definitely don't think was the smartest move. And it's really weird to me that they did it like that. So I'm hoping they do have a more in-depth showing next month that maybe can explain that. Because what are you doing? It does not look like it's just straight ripped out of a basic old school RPG to me. I do think there's something they're holding back, and they're talking about how it's dynamic, and they're talking about how it combines the old series with this style. Well, a full-blown turn-based RPG doesn't really combine anything from a Yakuza brawler, not in my opinion. So you have to do something different, and like I said, so that's kind of a wait-and-see thing. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about their comments and also look at why they might be making this change, because the series has been doing better in the West. The series is selling well. A lot of people are thinking RGG Studio has more money than ever. Why risk it at this point? And I do think I have a theory, and I've seen some other people touch on this, but I'm not entirely sure if it's true. Now, but before that, I do want to touch on a couple things. The series creator, of course, Nagoshi, did say that they would go back to traditional gameplay if it doesn't. He didn't say specifically it doesn't sell. He just said if it wasn't received well. And I also take that as they put it that he didn't actually use the word sell, but he mentioned that if it's not received well, which probably is sales, but it's possible that if it sells just as much as other games, but like its review scores are way lower, and fan interest ends up being lessened. It's possible that they like to go, oh, it's still sold, but next time it's going to sell a lot worse, so we're going to bail on this. So it is a possibility that things could change in the future. And they also talked about sales are good for Judgment, and they're looking into doing sequels for that. And I don't think they would change that. Like, I don't think if this is a Kiryu game, they would do turn-based. I think they're doing it because it's a new beginning. They said that. So I don't think they would change a set character series. I think they're trying to start fresh with Ichiban. But there was more interesting comments than Nagoshi. And by the way, it says he was dealing with serious heart issues. So wish him all the best, because definitely a big fan of his works and him. And I really hope he doesn't let any stress of negativity, if there's any backlash, get to someone with having recent heart problems. But the producer, Daisuke Sato, talked about this, and he was responding to feedback and saying, thank you about, there's harsh criticisms, but here's the plan, and by the way, it's okay if you don't like it, here's what we're trying to do. So some of this is not translated perfectly, but it says, thank you for your valuable feedback. I also feel your concern from all the comments. I assume he's getting spammed with people that aren't happy. He goes, thank you very much. Many harsh opinions have been received for this announcement, but I am grateful that everyone loved the old Yakuza series. This system change to a new dragon is a huge challenge. I was prepared to have some fans who didn't want the change. However, I do not intend to make a boring game, and I think that we should do our best to make this work a work loved by everyone. If you're not interested in it, or if you feel it is boring, it's not enough for us. I'm not saying you should support me. No, basically, I think he's saying no matter what. Like, you have to feel obligated to buy the game, which is fair. But I hope you can follow the upcoming news about the game. Basically, give it a chance. The entire team will make every effort to create a work that everyone can enjoy. So yeah, what he's basically saying is, you might think turn-based is boring. It's not intended to be boring, which again goes back to my theory that there's something we're missing, and that they did a bad job of the reveal of explaining everything, because I do think the combat has more to it than they've shown. And he's saying, you don't have to blindly support me, but follow the upcoming news. And again, that makes me think they're going to reveal something interesting, and I'm hoping that's at TGS next month, with the game set to come out in Japan in about 4 months, basically, as we're getting close to September here. So yeah, so that was an interesting comment. But the final thing I wanted to go over in this video, and then I probably give the Yakuza news a break, let it breathe until we get a news update, which I assume will be next month around TGS time, is why would they do this? A lot of people are saying the series is doing better in the West. Why do this now? In fact, if you look at this, the Yakuza 6 Western sales matched Japan for the first time in history, they announced at the time. Well, I think it's two things. Because while a lot of people assume that means, oh, the series is doing better than ever, I do think it's doing better than ever in the West, easily. But I do think part of it is a decline in sales in Japan is bothering them, and they were thinking, what would a Japanese audience want? This is, I think, something they're focused on, and I think it can be a mistake. Like I said, I'm okay with the combat change. I'm very interested in it. I enjoy games of most genres. Knock the mic, sorry. Of most genres, except to like maybe, MOBAs or tower defense. Whether it's turn-based or action or shooters, I enjoy a ton of different stuff. So I'm willing to try it as long as it has the rest that makes Yakuza amazing, the environments and the characters and story and stuff. But I think they're trying to appeal to a Japanese audience here, which could halt momentum in the West, and which is something I'm concerned about, because I like that the games are doing well and we're getting more of them. So this is Game Data Library, a site that keeps track of this full Japanese numbers, and all official have been sourced from Famitsu and Media Create and stuff like that. And I say that, and I will put a link down there because you say please credit the site if you're posting information here. So let you know, Game Data Library is very useful if you're curious about what's going on in Japan. So going over this real quick, these are the Yakuza games. And I've got all the SKUs combined because there's special editions and all that. This is everything combined. Now, Yakuza 6, we know, matched, they said, in the West. So, what did Yakuza 6 do limited, which is lifetime here? 392,000, so just shy of 400K. Well, that's the best-selling Yakuza game in quite a long time in Japan. Obviously, back at the beginning, Yakuza was an 800,000 seller in Japan and the PS2. Also in those days, it was tanking in the West, so it wasn't getting any extra sales, something to keep in mind. And then you can see PS3 numbers were in like the 600,000 range, basically. Heck, even the spin-off, Dead Souls, did 400,000, which is more than Yakuza 6. And that game was received very, not super positive. And, then they have their kind of setting spin-off, which we're still hoping will be localized someday, like Ishin and stuff, and Kenzan. So, anyway, then you look at the modern ones, the games that have actually really took off in the West. Yakuza 0 is considered the point where the series started really selling a lot better in the West. Well, we can see 0 here at like 150 on the PS4, and it did like 250. So that's like 400,000 combined. That's very good. Very similar to, just slightly better than 6, so pretty similar. The remakes did not do good, though. 110,000, that's pretty low. And since they said 6 was the first time it matched in the West, I would guess Kiwami hasn't hit 100,000 in the West, which is pretty low. I think at the low price point it should have done that. And Kiwami 2, 217, pretty low, I would say, for a very impressive remake. I think one of the more visually upgraded remakes ever. So the point is, you can see, and then you have the remasters here, and we're talking 50 between like 30 and 50,000. So the remasters on PS4 did not do hardly anything in Japan. I actually kind of think the Yakuza Remaster Collection will do better in the West than this. This is really low. And oh, by the way, just for a joke, look at those Wii U sales at 7,000. So anyway, when you look at all this, the point is Yakuza has been on a pretty notable decline in Japan. We're talking 800,000 to 600,000 to even a spin-off like Dead Souls being 400,000 to the best-selling Yakuza games in Japan, 0 and 6, doing basically 400 flat. So half a decline from the PS2 days, like a third from the PS3 days, stuff like that. And Judgment, by the way, did not do. It did like in the 150 range, I believe. Yeah, or no, Judgment did 315. So Judgment picked up, but still, like I said, that's max. That's still less than 6, and the games don't have good legs, good long-term sales in Japan traditionally. So I think that's what they're looking at, is saying, okay, the series has declined in the West, or in Japan. It's grown in the West, but the West is maybe picking up some of the slack that Japan has left us with, right? Oh, 6-match sales in Japan, but that still is just getting us combined into original Yakuza days. So we're not really growing from the beginning. And I think that's what they're hoping for, is how can we make this a hit in Japan? How can we sell 1 million in Japan? How can we get back to those 800,000 days in Japan and still make the 400,000 in the West and have an over 1 million seller worldwide? But I think that's kind of a fool's goal. I mean, they might be able to do it. There could certainly be a Yakuza game that could sell like that. But chasing just after Japan, I think, is probably the worst idea. I think the West is probably more important, and you accept what you get in Japan. Part of it is just showing the sales real quick. The best-selling hardware ever in Japan, you can see the PS2, basically 22 million after the Nintendo handheld stuff. And then we go down to the PS3, basically 10.5 million. PS4, under 8 million. The point is, console games and console sales have been on a steep decline in Japan, even though the PS4 is over 100 million worldwide. Less than 8 million of that is in Japan right now. That's not very good, right? Japan is shrunk. Japan, with its mobile market being so large, mobile definitely dominates the gaming industry in Japan. Obviously, Nintendo still does good. There are certain PlayStation things that still do good. But mobile is really big in Japan. It's maybe everywhere, but in the West, you still see these monster numbers if people are really attracted to the PS4 or certain games. In the West, even in Japan, even the best games, they don't do amazing like the old days. So I do think part of what we're seeing is them trying to attract the Japanese market more. And I think the Japanese market has just shrunk, and 400,000 or 250 to 400,000 with trying to attract those numbers in the West and combined is probably pretty good for Yakuza. And you hope you just grow it in the West and you keep selling what you do in Japan. But I think they're trying to really stem the tide from the Japanese decline. And you see series like Final Fantasy going more action because they're trying to sell more in the West, because they know the Japanese market is shrinking, and when that market shrinks, we can't appeal to them the most. Our main sales are going to come from outside of our home country. And I think Sega right now is very focused on Japan with Yakuza. How do we bring back more sales? And I do think that is potentially a risk. And I don't know saying this game won't sell well, because I think it looks really good. I do like the way it visually looks and everything. And I think the combat has more to it, and it could be amazing. And I myself am excited for it. And I've said in my first video talking about this, I said, my favorite thing are, I love the writing, I like the characters, I like the world, the immersion, the sub-stories, which are really funny. Those are some of my favorite things. Like, if they announced, hey, we're taking rid of the sub-stories, I'd be way more upset than a combat change. that would have me saying, they're ruining Yakuza, no sub-stories, what's the point? That would bother me more. So everyone kind of prefers their own thing. Yakuza has a lot of content, so everybody has the thing they like the most, they gravitate to the most. And this could have a lot of amazing stuff in those ways and end up doing really well. It might do well. I actually feel like once they show more, there's going to be more to it, and people are going to be very excited. And like I said, myself, I'm positive. I'm excited for the game. And because it's different, I'm actually even more excited for like news updates because we don't really know what to expect fully. And that's kind of exciting when you're not sure what you're getting. But at the same time, it is a risk in the West where you're going against what other companies do when they try to appeal to the West more. You're going the opposite. You're taking away the real-time combat, which the West usually prefers, even though obviously there are good selling games that are turn-based in the West. They're established. This is going to have to be like an out of left field RPG with doesn't have a background of, a persona or something at all. So it's going to have to come out strong, and we'll see how it does. I'm very interested how this winds up doing sales-wise, but I want to talk about that for a second because I do think it is a risk, and it's going to be interesting if it pays off, how it turns out, and it is definitely going against, I think, the industry trend of appealing to Japan more and considering the West second, when even Japanese games nowadays kind of need those Western sales even more. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Like I said, overall, I'm very excited for the game, as like Yakuza 0 was my favorite game of 2017, Kiwami 2 is my favorite game of 2018, Judgment's been my favorite game so far in 2019. Obviously, there's some big stuff still to come. So, 2020, here we go. Can we do it? Another game of the year? A lot of stiff competition next year, but I'm hopeful for it. And like I said, I really love, I like the combat in every Yakuza game. And Judgment was actually my favorite since 0 combat-wise, but I love, like everything else I love. I like the combat, I love everything else. So I'm okay for a change, but I would have been fine playing the same style of combat pretty much forever, and I still would have enjoyed it. And there also were other options for them to change if they wanted to change the series and not have it be the same kind of simpler brawler. Devil May Cry type combat where you need to do inputs, back forward, plus triangle circle, to do moves, like more like a fighting game style system. Could have been more Dark Souls-esque, which would have still been real time, but more thoughtful combat. I don't think that really works for Yakuza because it's a little more in your face, but turn-based is even more different. So the point is, there's definitely different outlets or different ways they could have went about this in terms of changing combat, and they went against the one that appeals to the West. Maybe they went in a way that appeals to the West the least, but the Japanese market the most. So we'll have to see how that works. And while I'm still interested and I'm excited, and I know a lot of people are based off the comments and stuff, there also are a lot of people who are negative, and I understand that because it is a drastic change. And we really don't know what to expect, but I agree with the producer Sato. Just keep track of the news, see what they say next, because I have a feeling there's kind of a surprise to this combat here that they are not letting on, which probably is a mistake, but maybe it'll make TGS even more exciting. So yeah, so those are my thoughts once I've had more time to think about it. If you have any, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.